Hey, Elliot Rowe here. I'm excited to bring you a special episode of the Mindset Advantage podcast. In episode 11, we're joined by high-stakes pro Brian Rast, and it was one of our most popular episodes to date. You may remember him talking about the Super High Roller Bowl. Well, he actually ended up winning that for $7.5 million, and he's been kind enough to return to the show to discuss his success. In this episode, you'll hear us talking about an upcoming webinar that me and Trisha are doing to help you develop and maintain focus at the tables. If you'd like more information on how to attend, just visit pokermindcoach.com/webinar. That's pokermindcoach.com/webinar. With that being said, let's start episode 19 of the Mindset Advantage podcast, and we'll be talking to Brian, discussing his recent $7.5 million score in the Super High Roller Bowl. Welcome to the Mindset Advantage podcast with Dr. Trisha Gardner and Elliot Rowe. So Trisha, please introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Trisha Gardner. I'm the author of Positive Poker, and I have a chapter on mental toughness in excelling at No Limit Hold'em, which just came out last month.
And my name is Elliot Rowe. I'm a hypnotherapist and mindset coach. I work with poker players and UFC fighters. So Trisha, this week, what news do you have for us?
Well, I have a bit of bad news, Elliot.
Oh, dear.
Yes, a new study has just come out, and it shows that sitting down all day is linked to increased anxiety. And it's not just sitting, but it's any low energy activity, which would be like watching TV or being on the computer all day or playing video games. The link between those sedentary behaviors and high levels of anxiety is stronger than, perhaps what we once thought. So this is really bad news for people who like to stay sitting all day long.
Okay, so obviously that's going to impact both live and online poker players.
Absolutely. And, there's so many bad things that come from having high levels of anxiety, including things like disturbed sleep, poor metabolism, social withdrawal. So, you put all that together and let's just take away all the health consequences, but it's just the mental health side of it is so negative.
And obviously anxiety isn't something that's going to be helping you with your poker game.
Absolutely. So everybody needs to make sure that you're taking regular breaks away from being sedentary, get out, take walks, like every hour or two, in fact. And I think that would really help lower the anxiety and also depression, because depression, a separate study found that sedentary behavior and depression were linked as well. So lots of extra exercise for people to be doing. Exactly.
Excellent. And thanks for that. This week we have Brian Rast coming back on the show. Some of you remember he was on a few weeks ago before the World Series started, and he was talking about playing in the Super High Roller Bowl. It was a $500K buy-in tournament, and he actually won that tournament. And he's come back to talk to us today about playing through that tournament and the sort of the mental work he did to make sure that he was in the best possible frame of mind. So let's give Brian a call. Brian, thanks for coming on the show. In case anyone hasn't heard yet, if you could tell us about the summer that you had.
I had a really good summer. I played a number of different tournaments. At the World Series, probably was my least successful area of my summer. I had 5 cashes, no final tables. But then, mostly, I guess, at the Aria, I played a couple tournaments there. I got 6th in 25K. I satellited from a 25K satellite to get my 500K seat. And then I won the 500K Super High Roller Bowl and, played a decent amount of cash over the summer and won overall. There was a big bet mix game at Aria I did pretty well in. And, I played some at the Bellagio, although not a ton. And yeah, I had a very good summer.
And I think obviously the big thing there is the fact you've satellited into and then won the biggest tournament of the year so far.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if it got topped this year. So I think I'm going to take the cake for biggest tournament won this year, which is nice.
For people who don't know, you basically turned 25,000 into about 7.5 million. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
That's amazing. Can you talk a little bit about the satellite? Like how many people were in the satellite? Was there just the one seat given, that sort of thing?
Yeah, no, the satellite tournament was kind of interesting. It was at the beginning of the summer. They ended up running 3 of them. Mine and the last one that happened right before the event were the only 2 that got enough people to have a seat. The second one didn't give out a seat. It ended up just being like a tournament. because obviously you needed to get like 20 or 21 players or whatever to have enough to cover the seat. So I believe it was 21 because it was a $24,000 satellite. And if you registered on time, you didn't pay 1,000 rake. But then if you were late, it was 25,000 and there was 1,000 rake. So they needed 21 players. And like my satellite got 22 players by the end of the registration period, which, was like 8 or 9 levels. And so it just barely got it. And there was obviously a really crazy bubble because nobody got anything until second, which got like 24,000 or whatever. And then first got the seat.
Mm-hmm.
So $500,000 or $25,000 for second.
Yes. So yeah, that was a very extreme bubble. Like
wow.
Probably the biggest bubble of the whole summer would be that right there, because even the like World Series of Poker final table bubble, unless you include like outside money or anything, but even that was only like 250,000. And I don't think like the 100K bubble was like 250,000. So yeah, it was an extreme situation, and I was fortunate because I kind of had a decent amount of chips at the final table, but it was close. But then as the final table went, I think I busted like this last 5 or 6 players, and like it just started amassing like a ton of chips and was in a really good spot. And while there's no ICM considerations, it made it very comfortable to play. And even when I got heads up, I had like 1.8 to like 400, so like 4.5 to 1 or something like that chip lead. And I just, maybe like if he had doubled up or something and we had gotten closer to even, we would have talked. But like I just said, let's play for now, because it was an opportunity to free roll the situation and not make a deal. And yeah, then I won the first all in with ace to king high. So
that's amazing. I don't think that the, poker media has really paid that much attention to how you were able to turn $25,000 into 7.5, almost $7.6 million. That's a pretty incredible ROI.
Yes. Yeah, no, that was amazing. Yeah. It was great just to win the satellite tournament, because basically, now I was going to be making money on the 500K no matter what happened. I didn't really let the situation affect what I did too much. Like I still ended up selling about what I was going to sell anyway, and instead I just got to keep that money and, played the tournament. And yeah, it was a great spot to be in. There was not really any stress in the 500K. It's not like if I lost, I was going to be out, whatever piece I kept to myself. So it was nice.
And, in those sorts of situations, how does that feel going in knowing that, I'm almost free rolling this now?
I think at the stage where I am in my career, it's not that big a deal. It's nice to know, but I'm like probably more conservative than most young guys with things. Like, I think, without getting into specifics, but I believe that many poker players that are younger than me would probably, given my bankroll size and everything, take like a bigger piece than I do. But, you don't win every tournament, right? And I just like the feeling going in that like I'm going to play, and win or lose, like it's not going to matter too much to me. So yeah, winning the satellite was really nice because it essentially was like winning, 475,000, right? Like I kept the money on the pieces, and because I was going to play the tournament either way. And then instead of having to put up money for my pieces and whatever, pieces I swapped or bought of other players, I just, got that automatically paid for. So, essentially I viewed winning the satellite as just winning $475,000. That was pretty much how I saw it.
So it's still a pretty good day.
Yeah, it was a great day, but I just basically didn't let it change anything about what I was going to do, other than, maybe the fact that I had won 475 or something would, encourage me to have like a slightly bigger piece of, me or other people, or just like the total amount of money I was going to risk on the tournament, given that increased my bankroll by some percent. So, yeah.
And it's quite interesting. With the show we did last time before the summer, you'd actually been talking quite excitedly. I think we were describing it as the most exciting tournament of the summer, the one that you were really looking forward to. And it's sort of turned into the fairy tale story, hasn't it?
Yeah, I like to think that, I can kind of get excited and get up for something and basically be playing my best when something like that happens. Like it's like being up or being excited for it just kind of increases maybe my focus, which is also something, I mean, you and I have worked on, and rather than detract from my performance, just makes it better. And I mean, obviously I was fortunate and ran well and had the cards break my way some. I mean, I feel like I played very good poker in that tournament and, generally had the best of it in a lot of big situations. And yeah, I mean, even in the satellite, I thought I actually played really well in that satellite tournament I won. And in general, I was really happy with my play pretty often this summer. I mean, maybe there was one or two times when I wasn't, but on the whole, given the volume that I put in, I thought that I played really well this summer and I had good results to show for it, which, I'm sure is in part due to that and in part due to good luck. So,
isn't that always the case when it comes to poker?
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, we do get a lot of questions pretty regularly from people about focus, and how do you focus for an event like the Super High Roller Bowl and keep that level of focus high throughout the whole event?
So for the Super High Roller Bowl, it's actually easier than most other situations because it's like a big tournament where I'm, playing big for myself. I mean, generally in bigger events, like I don't always take the same amount of myself in something. Like if there's a 100K and a 500K, like let's say I would sell something for the 100K, like let's say I would keep like 60K of the 100K or something and sell 40. Like I don't keep 60K of the 500K. Like I keep more, So like I like to be playing bigger in a bigger tournament, even if I would sell some in a smaller tournament also. So I mean, like the fact that I'm gambling bigger and have more on the line, I mean, it is something that captures your attention more. I mean, I think anyone that plays poker, it's like you're playing your normal game is like $1-2, and all of a sudden, one day you play like 10-20 or 5-10. You're going to be a little bit more focused, I think, naturally in that situation, just because you realize you're risking a lot more money and, you have a lot more to win or a lot more to lose. So, I mean, that's one thing that naturally, I think, makes it happen. And at least I've personally found that throughout my career, like I've really been more like naturally more focused. But it is a long tournament, 3 days. And I think, one of the things that helped me stay focused. I mean, I've been doing work with Elliot on the side. I've had a couple lessons, or it's not really lessons, but sessions, I guess, rather, with him. And some of the things that we talked about helped. I think some stuff that my wife was helping me with helped too. I mean, she has a basically like a mantra that, we were listening to regularly for like sort of almost like a prayer of sorts, but for like peace and calmness and basically asking for, good things for you personally, for your family, for your life. And it was something that like at the final table, like I listened to that a couple times on the breaks rather than talking with people. Cause my wife was telling me, listen, like right now, I don't want you to go and like get your ego worked up and stuff by like talking to people on the rails who like, might be saying like different things like, oh, you're going to win or all these things. She's like, I want you to go off and like, so, I mean, there were a couple of times where on the break with 5 minutes left, I'd go listen to this like 4-minute thing, just like in the back behind the final table with no one on my phone, YouTube, and then just come and go play rather than always talking to people on the breaks or whatever, which I did do some of that. So that was something that was helpful too. And then just visualizing, I think, just staying focused, like what I wanted to do, which is like watch the hands and not be distracted and, pay attention to how people were playing and everything. And I try to do the best that I could to, sort of navigate my opponent's strategies and what I wanted to be doing, given the chip situations and all that. And I mean, there was a lot to think about. And I tried to just keep my head on those topics the whole time and not let it wander. I mean, even when I lost this really big all-in and to Scott Seaver with my kings to his eights, like right at the end, I just told myself, you know what, like I'm still in it. I'm just not going to let that bother me. Cause I mean, that was like a massive pot. I mean, that pot was for like 14 million out of the 21 million chips. And like, if I had won that, I pretty much would have had the tournament sort of locked up. I was first placed. I would have been heads up. He would have had like 3 or 4 million to my like 17 million or something, 17 or 18 million. And, Scott ended up winning that pot And the situation now is Scott has 14 million chips and I have like 4 and Connor has like 3 or 4, which is like obviously way different and much worse. And, I just tried to say, I'm still in it. I'm going to just focus on playing my best. That hand's in the past. I'm not going to let that hand dictate what's going to happen. Like, I'm going to come back and try to win. And, fortunately, things went well from there. And I had a little bit of luck that helped me. I mean, a lot of luck that helped me after that. But yeah, so.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you. I made a note about that hand because I was impressed by the accounts you had given in the media where basically it was just like your attitude was never give up. I'll never give up. And I was just wondering, like, how did you develop that? Did you always have that kind of attitude or did it come over time?
I mean, I've always been very competitive. I've always been a fighter. I've never been a person to give up. So it's very natural for me. I think that when I was younger, it was a little bit more natural for me to maybe get frustrated when something like that would happen. But I think personally, I've always been a person, like, I realize the magnitude of the situation I was in and sort of the chance that I had, to win this tournament. And I wasn't going to squander that over, my personal feelings about my luck at the time. I mean, yeah, like, it sucks. I went from probably being like 90% or 80% to win the tournament to 20, 25% or whatever I am after that pot. So, I mean, that's such a huge swing in just money and whatever, everything. I mean, anything can happen in a tournament. And I think it's just something in life that I've learned over years playing poker and I've worked on, and I've learned repeatedly, like telling myself, you read it in all kinds of places. It's a life lesson that it's like the past is the past. Like you can't control it anymore. Like, this hand already happened. Scott flopped an 8. Like, it sucks. But guess what? Like, I'm not out of the tournament yet. I still have 4 million chips and I can still fight. I can still maybe get second, which is a lot more money than third. Like, that was a really big jump, actually. And then maybe I can win, which is a lot more money than second or third. And obviously has other benefits of it too. So it's just like, why wallow in something that's done and I have no control over? It's like time to fight. And you know what? If I end up losing or something, I can go out and get drunk and complain about it later that night about how unlucky I am to have lost the tournament when I had it all wrapped up with the 8 and then I went out a little bit later. I'll have plenty of time to complain. I almost want to use another word that's inappropriate, but to complain about that after the fact. But you know what? It didn't happen. And I think it's really important in situations like that to not let yourself give up. I mean, don't give up until it's actually over. When it's not over, you can still fight. You can still come back and win, So why put yourself in a state of mind where you're not going to perform your best?
And I really hope that the listeners are focusing on this information. So many guys talk to me and they talk about that bad beat that hasn't knocked them out, but then they punt off the rest of their stack, even when they're very deep in big competitions, big tournaments. And this is the difference between someone who really excels. This is the very top play in the world that you're doing. And you were able to cope with that, and that's why you're in that position, because many, many poker players, that bad beat happens, and then their game completely disintegrates from that point forward.
Yeah, I mean, Antonio was on my rail, and he told me after the tournament that he was like, it really struck him how, like, after that hand, which is obviously like a pretty immense bad beat, just given the size of the pot and how much of a favorite I am and the implications.
Well, it's literally the biggest bad beat of 2015 so far, isn't it?
Yeah.
Probably. of anyone has had this year. I mean,
yeah, the difference in just raw equity is probably, like, I'm probably worth, like, almost 7. And after the hand, like, I don't remember what third is, but let's say it was like 3 million. I mean, I'm probably worth I'm probably not worth 5. Maybe I'm worth high 4s. So, I mean, we're talking about just an equity bad beat there of, over $2 million. Just the difference between what I'm worth before and after the pot. And, I'm not 100% to win. I'm like 80 something percent, but, take 84% or whatever it is of like 2.5 million. I mean, it's a big number in equity that I lost on that. But yeah, I mean, Antonio told me he was like pretty amazed and pretty proud of how, like, the hand happened. And I just sat back down and went right back to work, and it just looked like it didn't bother me. And I just sat there, and I mean, there was a little part of me that was like a bit angry and a bit upset and a bit like, oh my God, like fucking every time, like other one drop, I get the nut flush and Trickett makes quads. It's just, what's this bullshit? But then, you know, you just stamp that part out of your mind immediately and just say, you know what? Fuck it. I am not going to let this get me down. I'm in a great situation. I can still win this tournament, and I'm going to sit down and play these chips the best I can and just push that out. I mean, that's all noise. It doesn't mean anything. It's me being attached to like whatever, bad luck or past events, and I'm going to sit down and just focus. And I actually think I did a very good job in that moment, and I'm very proud of the fact that I didn't just say that, but then stay there wallowing in it, which sometimes it's hard to stop yourself from doing that. I actually said that and actually pushed the stuff out of my mind and moved on. And I thought I played well after that and didn't let it bother me. So, I mean, it did help that, you know, 5 hands later, I basically got in a cooler spot where I had 8s against queens. Like I raised and Connor shoved and I called, and, you know, he had queens and I had 8s, and it was like 3-3-4 and then an 8 on the turn, which was like, felt like it was just sent there from like, you know, either God put it there or just like justice put it out there, because twice now I had gotten all in with kings to 8s and an 8 came, and it's just finally I had the 8s and it was behind and I got an 8. So, I mean, like that helped a lot. And then that, you know, that put me back in, and I was still at a 2-1 chip disadvantage to Scott heads up. But, I mean, it was nice to have something shake my way there. So, yeah, it was like out of my mind instantly almost. I mean, I played a couple hands. I actually won a couple pots, or 1 or 2 of the pots right before that, which ended up meaning that I had a few more chips than Connor. So he was the one that was all in, and I eliminated him. And he was actually, I think he was the first player that I eliminated at the final table. Like I had the chip lead at the a big chip lead at the beginning of the final table, and I didn't eliminate anybody, but like I didn't have any big all-ins or anything, but I had chipped up. I mean, when we were like 4 and 3 handed, I had like 50 to 65% of the chips like wavering in there. And I had no big all-ins. I mean, I think early in the final table, we'll see what comes out on the coverage. But early on, I had played a number of good pots. I had a couple bluffs that went through. None of them got caught. I thought I played really well, picked my spots to pick up chips, and I was really happy with that, with my being able to chip up without, you know, having big all-ins, just where the cards run out and, you know, luck determines who wins.
So the 2 big takeaways are, number 1, always play pocket 8s. And number 2,
Yes.
and number 2, you don't have to bust out everybody on the final table to end up winning almost $8 million.
Yeah, I only knocked out the last 2, I guess. I mean, you do have to knock out at least one person.
Yeah, at least one.
At least one you have to knock out.
Yeah.
And obviously, you know, from the mental game side, we started working on the focus and things like that. What do you think, you know, this late in your career, starting to work on that side a little bit more, has that made a difference to the way that you play?
Yeah, for sure. I think going into this summer, going back to kind of where I was, like when we had talked a few times and you offered for us to do like a free session, I mean, it was like very clear to me in that first session that we did that my head wasn't really in the right place oftentimes when I was playing poker. And that, I mean, that's not where I wanted to be. I mean, I wanted to be focused. I wanted to be in the game. I didn't want to be distracted by things and not playing my best. I mean, I'm playing poker for a lot of money, even if I'm playing in cash games. And, you know, it's important to me both like financially and personally, and just also on a career level. I mean, you know, the number of how well I'll do and the accomplishments I'll have in tournaments and stuff is going to be a lot higher, you know, if I'm focused and playing good. So it was just something that I immediately became aware of. It's why, you know, we ended up doing a few sessions throughout the summer, I think, to like keep that going. I mean, I think it's something that it'd be interesting to hear if you agree with me on this, but I think like a lot of the stuff that we talked about is like, I'm aware of it. I knew about it. I knew it was something I was weak at. And so I feel like just starting to work with you, I was instantly able to like really, really improve in those areas, because I mean, being focused at a poker table is not something that was foreign to me and not something that I needed to know was a good thing. I just needed to be able to train my mind a little bit more to be in that zone, and that's where I needed to be when I went to play.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that a lot of guys, it's not necessarily that everyone knows exactly what they should be doing,
Yes.
what they should look like at the table. But it's not until, especially when you're talking about very high level pros like yourself, a lot of the time they're not aware that they're not doing it until they really start talking about it and being honest about the situation. And then once that conversation started, the changes will almost automatically happen, because it's impossible for somebody who's intelligent to not realize the steps they need to take once they're being absolutely honest about what's happening at the table and the level of focus that they're giving. So yeah, I agree completely. It's once the awareness of what the perfect is already there, but it's usually hidden by, well, I can make money anyway, and things are going fine, and it's not given the level of effort or the level of respect perhaps it should have until we start talking about these things in a lot of depth, and then people tend to have these aha moments, and then everything can shift.
Yeah, and then I think it's also important, and one of the reasons why, I mean, I didn't just talk about it with you, but I actually do like doing, sessions on we would do it like every other week or whatever, is that like in life, it's like the practice of regular meditation or just putting your mind in whatever state it is that does it. I have found over my life, and I think most people would agree, that you'll go to some seminar or you'll learn something, but as time goes on, that self-awareness that you have about how to be a certain way dulls, and you fade back into old habits. And so, it was somewhat easy, I guess, this summer, given that we did this 2 weeks before the summer, and we had a couple of things, and I was playing poker every day, for me to stay in the habit of being really focused. I mean, things were going well for me. I was having good results really fast, and, it's nice and happy to play. I'm happy. Everyone's happy to play when they're winning. So, I mean, it was like a good convergence of a bunch of situations. But I mean, the key for me going forward, and probably most people, is to remember that. And I'm probably about not to play poker that much for the next month or month and a half. And then, when I come back, sort of, these ideas might be duller or a little more distant in my mind, but still maintaining them. So, yes.
I guess it's a bit like the going to the gym with a personal trainer or going to the gym on your own. You still know what to do in the gym, but it's still different going to the gym with a personal trainer, and the sort of mindset coaching me and Trisha do is the same sort of thing. It's, yes, you can do it yourself, but the level of awareness you'll have on it is very different to if you've got a professional working with you.
And then also, you said the key words to me, which is train your mind. It's an active training process. And if you're not always doing it and building that, mental muscle, it just slips away so easily.
Yes, I agree. And I one thing about how I am is I am the type of person that my mind always needs to be active. I mean, I always need to be thinking about something or doing something or learning something. And so it's, on the one hand, it's nice because I naturally will keep my mind pretty active, but it does sometimes lead to me being distracted or wanting to do other things if I'm doing something that's a little boring, which poker has felt that way. But I mean, it was really refreshing to sit back and be like, you know what? I mean, I'm sort of not giving a fair shake to poker, because the truth is that it's still fun and exciting and fresh to use my mind to try to play really well at the poker table and try to win as much as I can and get the biggest edge that I can while I'm sitting there, and not to be thinking about some other distraction while I'm working. Mm-hmm. And it was really nice to come into the World Series this year and think that way and play that way, and kind of, I mean, also get the positive feedback with the results, and I felt like the level of my play. Mm. I mean, in addition to the tournaments that I played, or this one result, I played this pretty regularly. The game that I tried to play the most this summer didn't go every day, but when it went was this big bet mix, which was a mix of 7 or 8 different big bet games, which, some of which I hadn't really played that much, and most of the people at the table hadn't really played some of the games very often, like pot limit, 5-card double draw high. And we basically invented that game for the mix. Normally it's played single draw, no limit. So, it was I had very good results. I felt like I was one of the, if not the best player in that mix oftentimes. And sitting there and really focusing on that and trying to play well, I mean, was awesome. And, I'm this attitude of let's go back to that. Poker is work. When I go play poker, I'm there, I'm trying to be in the moment. Don't want to think about something else. I don't want to be thinking about a basketball game or, my friends or, even like my family. Like I love my family, but, I need to be present with my family when I go home and present in my job when I, go to play. So it was really nice to do that and have good results come.
I do want to follow up with just one other thing, because I know this was filmed, the Super High Roller Bowl was filmed for Poker Central. I wanted to get your opinion on, what do you think having a channel like Poker Central is going to do for poker? Do you think another boom might come out of it or not?
Yeah, I've actually spent some time giving big ups to Kari for everything that he's done for poker. And it's unclear, I think. I mean, I think having a poker channel will only be positive for poker. How positive it will be will depend on the success the channel has. I mean, if the channel comes in and fails after a year or two, I think it both could be because, poker doesn't really improve, people don't get drawn in, and that's part of the reason why the channel fails, and therefore it won't have a lasting impact. But the timing of the channel is decent in the sense that, okay, so this channel is going to come on the air. There's going to be an avenue for people to watch more poker, and for advertisers who want to advertise poker things or to poker players can, obviously go to that channel and have a place for that. Online poker has started to creep back in the US, like Vegas and New Jersey. Everyone's talking about California. PokerStars is obviously making, a play through media, like to focus on bringing it back to California. So, if that starts happening and online poker starts coming back to the US, advertisement dollars will start coming back. And what's sort of a more natural place to advertise than the poker channel? So, it could be a good conflagration of all these things happening together, which I think would cause like a mini poker boom a little bit. You'd get online poker money back. You'd start to get satellites into big live events like the main event, and like those numbers would probably go up, and there'd just be another place for people to play who don't like going to casinos but would play in their home. So yeah, I don't think it's clear what will happen, but it could range from just having like a small positive effect, but like things don't really work out, to it kind of having a really big effect and being part of like a mini boom like that, combined with online poker coming back, if the states continue to kind of fall like dominoes and let it come back, which I think is likely, but not a guarantee.
Right.
And the other thing about the TV channel coming in now is there's so much streaming going on online that although it will be a US TV channel, people around the world will see those shows. Whereas, 10 years ago, there wasn't the same level of video watched on the internet. So, hopefully that will make worldwide celebrities even more so of the poker players, where, in some countries they just wouldn't have coverage of poker on TV.
Yeah, and Kari seems to be pretty savvy. He already has obviously had a successful business with his like college student loans thing that he's become independently wealthy on. But as far as, which I don't know anything about other than that it was a success. But I have seen personally like him create these ARIA, one day high roller tournaments. He's like constantly been like tweaking the structure. And like the end result has been like, these are really good one day tournaments. It's about as much play as I've ever had in one day. It can be a pretty long day if you play down to the end, but it's still over in one day. And he brought this structure to the Super High Roller Bowl. He's creating the Poker Central TV channel. He's obviously working with Maury and getting the rights to old poker TV shows and creating some new ones of his own. And he seems to be like a very highly motivated and organized person who, I think is, I wouldn't mind betting on him. Like, it seems like he's got good business acumen, and if someone's going to make this succeed, like he might be the right guy for it. So
fingers crossed.
Yeah, it would obviously be great for poker. So I am very much hoping that this works out.
Yeah, I feel like it's wonderful that he's such a great business guy and that he has such a love for the game of poker. It's like an unbeatable combination.
Yes, like he definitely really loves poker. He really loves playing. He plays like the one drop and the 500K. Obviously the 500K is incentivized because he made it. But he plays like World Series tournaments, and he loves playing. Like, he made those high rollers in Vegas probably in part because he wanted to go play tournaments like 1 or 2 times every month.
Right.
So he made these tournaments which with low rake, which attracted, he came and attracted a wide range of people, and they've been pretty good tournaments. But, it's great. Like, he definitely loves poker.
Excellent. And what are the plans now moving on? How are you going to top the super high rollerball?
It's going to be hard to top that. I mean, I'm probably a favorite never to cash for more than that in a tournament, I would think, in my life. But so I'm not really necessarily planning to top it. I would like to build on it. I guess what's next is I have a decent amount of travel planned. Like, we're going to go to Brazil in a little bit for a couple weeks, just mostly be relaxing there. Come back. I have a couple weddings. I'm going to be going to Burning Man. So a lot of like non-poker things. I think the next poker thing that I know I'm doing for sure is I will be going to the second part. I'll miss the first couple events for a wedding, but I'll make the second half of the World Series of Poker Europe, which honestly in my life I've never traveled so far for like so little action. I mean, it's like a 10K and a 25K and all the rest are like under 3K or something. But, I'm going in part, I've never been to Germany. And I would love to win another bracelet. And, I kind of view at this point, I think the way the poker world is shaped out, like World Series of Poker bracelets are kind of like the most prestigious poker accomplishment, sort of, that you show the world. I mean, not, obviously the most for yourself would be like how much money you're winning. But, no one knows that. Because like nobody would know, how you're doing in cash games or what piece of yourself you have in tournaments. So sort of that's probably the number one thing. So I've kind of, now the World Series is backed off a little bit. There's only one stop a year. They only either do Europe or Asia and they alternate. So it's just one trip. So I've decided at least for the next couple of years, I'll probably be, making those trips. And then, but yeah, that's probably mostly it for poker this year. Probably World Series of Poker Europe, and will be the Bellagio stuff here in December. And then I'll just, other than that, when I'm in Vegas, if there's a game or I feel like playing, maybe I'll play. But I probably won't have a ton of poker for a little while.
And then final question of the day, Brian. Are you wearing that ring at the table every time you play? Or is that locked in a safe somewhere?
It's locked in a safe. I haven't actually worn it yet to go play. I did try it on right when I won it. But yeah, I mean, that thing's a little...
So you're not looking like a rapper yet?
It's way too ostentatious for me. I don't think I'd feel strange wearing that around. Like, I'm not really a bling jewelry kind of guy. So it's a little over the top, but it does have a lot of diamonds. I'm sure it's worth a decent amount. So I will be keeping it safe.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Congratulations on an amazing summer. And we're looking forward to watching you win some more.
Absolutely. We need you to hit the 5th 7-figure score of your career so you can come back on and we can talk about that.
Well, I will give that a shot in Europe in a little bit. So
awesome.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. Cheers, Brian.
Thank you guys for having me again.
So it was great having Brian on the show. It's really quite incredible in terms of how he dealt with the pressure, especially after that bad beat hand, isn't it?
What I found so interesting and I thought was a major takeaway was that the lesson is the past, and you can't get hung up on that. You can't dwell on it. You just have to say, that happened. I'll deal with those bad feelings later. But right now, I'm going to go forward and put my focus on what I can control, which is what's, in front of me right now.
Yeah, I think that's a really key thing for MTT players. It's something I certainly cover an awful lot, is that it's irrelevant whether you've just lost half your stack in the last hand. All that's important is adjusting to the new stack size and playing this hand as well as it can be possibly played. And if you take that approach, it gives you the opportunity to win. Whereas if you punt off, you don't. And that's literally what we've seen Brian do there and take himself all the way to $7.5 million.
And the other thing that he really stressed a lot was training your mind and doing whatever it takes, whether it's working with you, Elliot, or myself, or, giving yourself pep talks or getting a mantra, visualization. I mean, he talked about so many different really kind of exercise type things you can do for your mind.
And I think people are really going to see when it eventually comes onto television, that tournament. So many people commented on Twitter and Facebook the level of focus they saw him have in that tournament. And it's because he's actually working on that, whereas a lot of professionals don't give it the respect it deserves.
If you want to be in the top tier, you have to do everything you can to get every little edge. And I think he's the perfect example of somebody who's doing that.
Yeah, as I say, it's just great to see all of it put in action. And yeah, $7.5 million and a very sparkly ring at the end. If anyone's interested in learning more about how we deal with focus and improving it at the table, me and Trisha are doing a webinar on the 5th of August. For more information on that, head to my website at www.pokermindcoach.com. And Trisha, where can people find out about you and your products?
Go ahead and follow me on Twitter at Dr. Trisha Cardner, or you can come to my website, drtrishacardner.com.
Excellent. And we'll be talking to you all next week.
Cheers.